Since kindergarten, Baldwin and I have never gone more than 3 days without seeing each other. But ever since our families arranged for us to be engaged, he has avoided me for an entire year. He blocked all my contact information, and the security at his company said that neither strangers nor Elsie were allowed in. Every time I showed up in his line of sight, he would immediately turn around and leave. Later, his friends couldn't stand it anymore and secretly took me to see him. When I arrived, Baldwin's cold voice came from the crack in the door. "Just a little thing that comes running when I beckon. You're neither capable nor interesting. Engaging with you makes me feel like I'm lowering my value." I held the doorknob and didn't push the door further. Charles, standing behind me, quickly explained. "Don't listen to him, he's just talking nonsense because he's drunk. I'll go yell at him." He reached for the door, but I grabbed his wrist and shook my head. All I ever wanted was to ask Baldwin why he was so opposed to marrying me, to the point that it became gossip in our high society circle. Baldwin and I grew up together, almost like siblings. But he's not my real brother. We all have to get married someday, so why not me? Now, I finally understand why. It's not that I'm not good enough or not pretty enough. It's that he has always seen me as nothing more than a pet he raised since childhood. Something to amuse himself with? Kill time? Or just something nice to have around? As Charles wiped my tears with a tissue, he muttered, "Darren and the others, just chatting nonsense, not one of them makes sense." "It's fine." I took a deep breath. "Can you take me back? I don't want to see him anymore." "All right, hey." Just as we were about to turn and leave, the door to the private room suddenly opened from the inside. We froze and stared at Darren, who had opened the door. Darren, still unaware of the situation, pulled me inside. This gathering was originally for everyone to convince Baldwin and me to make up. Darren sat me across from Baldwin. "Even if you're fighting with your family, you shouldn't treat Elsie like this. She's someone we've seen grow up, you should talk to her properly and not let this turn into some misunderstanding." Since I entered the room, Baldwin hadn't looked at me once. But the back of his hand gripping his glass was already tense with veins. Charles came in and subtly shook his head at Darren. Before Charles could pull me up, Baldwin finally spoke. "Elsie, why don't you ever listen to me? Didn't I say that we shouldn't meet until Grandpa and my parents change their minds? Why are you so stubborn?" I hung my head, unsure of what to say. The atmosphere in the room was frozen. The last time Baldwin was this angry was when a senior from his school confessed to me. Charles sighed and walked over to pat my head. Then he waved the other guys out of the room, leaving me alone with Baldwin. Baldwin irritably took a sip of his drink. "Can't you have any self-respect? I told you I have no interest in you, I've never seen you as a woman. Instead of clinging to me, why don't you work on improving yourself? All you ever do is revolve around men. Are you some kind of desperate woman? When I take over the company and travel all the time for meetings, I can't have you following me around." I felt like I had plunged into icy water, my body numb and drained of the energy to speak. So this is how he's seen me all these years. So stay away from me. Grandpa will probably give up on this engagement soon anyway. I understand. Are you going to have Charles and the others help you find me again? I'm done making a fuss. Images of my entire life with him flashed in my mind like a carousel. I used to cherish these memories as my most precious treasures. But now, I realize how foolish I've been. I ignored how Baldwin became increasingly impatient with me starting in high school. I ignored how he openly disliked my clothes and appearance. I ignored how, after he found out that his senior confessed to me, he instinctively said, someone could actually like her. I looked up at Baldwin seriously. "Baldwin, I really appreciate that you saved me when I was little. From now on, I'll remember this. I won't bother you anymore." With that, I stood up and left, not looking back. Back at the villa, I turned on the lights. The villa was still as empty as ever. My parents were rarely home, and Grandpa lived in the mountains to rest and cultivate himself. According to Baldwin's mom, when I was born, there was only one nanny taking care of me. When I was 3 years old, one day the nanny left the door open while she went out to buy groceries. I ran out of the house and fell in the middle of the street. Baldwin, playing in the yard, heard me crying and didn't know which family I belonged to, so he took me back to his house. For nearly 10 years after that, I grew up following Baldwin. We went to the same elementary school, middle school, and even university. When I was bullied for being antisocial, it was Baldwin who had my back. He taught me how to protect myself. Baldwin spent more time in my life than my so-called parents ever did. I had relied on him too much. So when he started avoiding me, I panicked and searched for him everywhere, feeling like the whole world had become terrifyingly empty. A year isn't long. But it felt harder than the previous 10 years. I sat in front of my computer, staring blankly at the email saying my exchange student application had been approved. The therapist had suggested I change my environment and develop new hobbies to distract myself. I had originally planned to tell Baldwin. But when I thought of it, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. He would probably prefer me to stay far away from him. When I left, I only sent a text to my parents, even though I knew they wouldn't care. Arriving in Y Country, I clumsily handled all the paperwork and found a place to rent. It wasn't as difficult as I had imagined. While waiting for the school term to start, I traveled to nearby cities for sightseeing. Just as the therapist had said. Walking around and experiencing the world really does change your perspective. Habits change too. After being robbed 3 times and harassed countless others, I decided to learn martial arts. No one would protect me anymore, I had to learn how to protect myself. 2 months after school started in Y Country, I suddenly received a call from Charles. "You went to Y Country and didn't even tell us?" "We only found out because we ran into some of your classmates." "I'm just studying and taking a break, I'll be back in a few months, don't worry." "So, how's life going? Is your place safe?" "Everything's fine, very safe." "Good. Why don't you tell Baldwin? He has some friends here." "No need, I'm fine. I don't want to trouble anyone." "Alright, but if anything comes up, make sure to contact me, or Baldwin." In Baldwin's office, Charles heard the call disconnect before turning off his phone. "She's grown up." Baldwin twirled his lighter, his face dark with irritation. "You're the one who told her not to contact you." Charles casually sat on the couch, looking at Elsie's exchange student application form. "Not contacting you doesn't mean she can't call or text." "Oh my God, just look at your blacklist. You were the one who said you were going to stop pretending and really blocked her, so how is she supposed to contact you?" "If it were me, I wouldn't bother either." Charles rolled his eyes. He was Baldwin's good friend and had watched Elsie grow up. He knew a bit about Elsie's family situation. She never had parental love, didn't speak much, and always clung to Baldwin. But Baldwin had always said there was nothing romantic between them. Let them sort it out, Charles thought. After Charles left, Baldwin rubbed his temple. He felt a knot of frustration in his chest, unsure of how to deal with it. It was worse than when he first saw all those portraits of himself in Elsie's studio. The two families had jointly pressured him into getting engaged to Elsie. Elsie was only a junior in college and had never been in a relationship. What could she possibly understand? Baldwin swiped through his phone screen. After hesitating for a moment, he pulled Elsie's contact out of his blacklist. Then he dialed the internal line to call his secretary, Jessica, into his office. "Sir." Elsie went to Country Y on her own. Jessica raised an eyebrow, a fleeting look of smugness crossing her face, before quickly suppressing it. "This shows that the tough love approach I suggested is working. Miss Elsie has never had proper guidance, and no one ever corrected her mistakes. She's a junior now, still only knows how to revolve around you. How is she ever going to make something of herself? A girl like that will never grow on her own unless you speak to her harshly. She'll never stand up and walk independently." Jessica explained with a smile. "Plus, Miss Elsie going abroad doesn't necessarily mean progress. She might be trying out some cat and mouse game like in romance novels. I'm a woman too. Don't I know these little tricks of hers? To correct her, you need to keep some distance." Baldwin thought for a moment. "But she's never been far from home. Miss Elsie is a junior in college. What could she possibly not know? I was younger than her when I went off to college in an unfamiliar city. There's no such thing as too many difficulties. Girls don't need to be babied like this." Baldwin paused and realized that Jessica had a point. Maybe Elsie had confused familial love with romantic feelings, because she had met so few men. It was probably time for her to venture out on her own. He told Jessica to cancel his flight to Country Y and return to handling business matters. The shooting score had improved quite a bit from the last time. After nodding to my coach, I put down the M1 rifle and rubbed my wrist. I quietly packed my things and emptied my mind. I had a combat class in the afternoon, and I needed to get back early in the evening. Otherwise, I might run into that annoying neighbor again. Just as I reached the door, a tall man walked toward me. I quietly lowered my head to avoid him. But he walked right up to me and stopped. "Excuse me, are you Miss Elsie?" "Yes, and you are." I looked up, curious. The man in front of me was dressed in a bespoke suit, exuding an oppressive air of authority. But when our eyes met, that oppressive feeling seemed to vanish. His eyes were a deep shade of blue. "My name is Gordon. I'm a friend of Baldwin." "Oh. Is there something I can help you with?" "Baldwin mentioned that you came here to study abroad, but he's a little worried, so he asked me to look out for you. Your apartment isn't very safe. I've arranged a place for you to stay. Would you like to move in? You can give Baldwin a call if you want." Gordon gestured for me to follow him into the nearby cafe. He took out his phone and dialed a number. After a few moments of small talk, he politely handed me the phone. "Elsie. Baldwin said that Gordon's family business has some dealings with his, and he'll arrange your accommodations. You can ask him for help with anything in your daily life." I steadied myself, hearing Baldwin's familiar voice. It felt almost like before, when he still hadn't been avoiding me. Maybe it was time, or the distance between us, or perhaps the year of separation had made a difference. I wasn't as heartbroken as I'd imagined. "Okay, I understand. Thank you." There was a brief pause on the other end before Baldwin spoke again. "But don't be a doormat and cling to him. Learn to be independent and make some progress, alright?" "I know." After hanging up, I handed the phone back to Gordon. I obediently followed him to the car. Since they were business partners, Baldwin must have promised Gordon something in return. For my own safety abroad, I wouldn't argue with his arrangements. In the car, Gordon immediately made a call to have my luggage packed. Then he took me out for dinner. An hour later, the driver pulled the car into a manor. "Miss Elsie, please." "Thank you." I got out of the car and saw the butler and a few maids waiting. Gordon gestured for me to follow him inside. "You don't need to call me sir, I met you when you were 7 before I went abroad, and we've seen each other a few times." I looked up at him, confused. "Back then, you were playing hide and seek with Baldwin and bumped into my leg. You sat on the ground crying." Gordon recalled, and the memory made him smile. He had been at Baldwin's house with his father at the time. As soon as they entered, a little girl ran straight into him. At that age, most children would have cried loudly if they were hurt. But little Elsie simply touched her nose, sat on the ground blankly, and blinked as tears fell. Before he could comfort her, she wiped her own tears away and muttered, "It doesn't hurt," then stood up and ran off. Thinking back, he figured she must have been in pain but had no one to comfort her. Baldwin, that little rascal, was only 9 years old himself, and his parents had no time for the neighbor's child. At the time, Gordon had even thought, "If no one's going to look after this kid, I might as well take her with me." He never expected that more than 10 years later, he would be realizing that childhood wish. Before I knew it, we reached the second floor. In a room to the right of the staircase, a man and a few maids were packing my luggage. The man stepped out to greet us. "Sir, wasn't Miss Elsie supposed to stay in a flat down south? Why has it changed to your manor?" At this, I looked up at Gordon. The tall man rubbed his nose. "Oh, my cousin is moving in there soon, so I had to put Miss Elsie up here for now." "Got it." The next few days passed peacefully. Gordon had arranged a small studio for me on the 3rd floor. When I wasn't in class, I spent my time painting in the studio. Gordon often worked in the study. Sometimes, he would sit next to me and watch me paint, joking that he was collecting the works of a future great artist. After learning that I was practicing shooting and fighting, he even volunteered to be my coach. When he saw my simple athletic wear, he had a luxury brand send over a bunch of carefully coordinated outfits. He had great taste. I didn't even know I could look this good. I thought my life would stay peaceful forever. But one day, I noticed a different atmosphere in the manor. The butler knocked on my door. "Miss Elsie, the manor needs to undergo a thorough cleaning. You'll need to stay in a hotel for a few days to a week. The driver and maids will be with you, so it won't affect your lifestyle." I scratched the door frame with my fingertips, hesitated for a moment, then couldn't stop myself from asking. "Will he also be staying at the hotel?" This situation. I felt a sinking feeling in my chest, strangely familiar. Has Gordon grown tired of me too? After only 3 months of living here? He's going on a business trip. He'll personally pick you up when he returns. I clenched my fists tightly, suppressing the bitterness rising in my chest, and replied. "Okay. When do we leave?" "Right now, if you're ready." I said I would change clothes, then closed the door. I gave a wry smile. It's fine. It's not like it's the first time. Reflecting on the past 3 months with Gordon, there were times when I felt like I had met a kindred spirit. His compulsive little habits, combined with his interpretations of my paintings. Forget it, I don't want to think about it. Maybe he really did have something to take care of. I grabbed my backpack and went downstairs. Most of the maids had already left, and only the butler and driver were waiting at the door. Suddenly, an idea crossed my mind. Could it be that Gordon went bankrupt? I couldn't help but make light of the situation, and ended up choking on my own spit. I made a gesture to the butler and turned to run to the kitchen to grab some water. I'm still not very familiar with this estate. It's not that big, but it's also not small. After drinking the water, I passed by a slightly ajar room. From inside, I could faintly hear the sound of glass breaking. Didn't they say everyone had left? Could it be Gordon's pet cat or dog? It couldn't be a person, could it? Curiosity killed the cat. I went back to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and returned to gently push open the door. Behind the door was a staircase leading down. Is this the basement? The light by the stairs was on, and there were beautiful paintings on the walls. I held my phone in one hand and the knife in the other, slowly walking down. There was another door at the bottom, exquisitely designed. I thought about stopping right there. What if there's danger? Just as I was about to leave, I heard a familiar sound. It was just a low groan, but I could tell it was Gordon's voice. I turned and pulled open the door. He was sitting on the floor, looking defeated. There were shattered wine bottles on the ground, and Gordon's right hand was gripping a shard of glass. His left hand was a bloody mess from hitting the wall. I hesitated between running away and acting on my instinct to help him. In the end, I chose to crouch by the door and call out to him. I wasn't totally afraid, but still, a little bit. "Gordon? Are you okay?" Gordon froze, his body tense. It was as if he hadn't expected anyone to speak to him. He turned and looked at me by the door. "Elsie? How did you find this place? Didn't the butler take you away?" Gordon forced out a smile, as gentle as usual, though his left hand was still trembling. I hesitated for a few minutes, regretting that I had called out to him. "Well, I'll leave then. I won't bother you. Don't forget to take care of your injury." Just as I was about to close the door, I heard him softly plead, "Please don't go." "Huh? I won't hurt you, don't be afraid. I just had a nightmare and couldn't sleep, I'm a little scared." "Elsie, can you stay with me for a while?" I left the basement and saw the butler still standing at the door. "Miss Elsie, what are your plans?" "I'll stay and take care of him." "He must have called you just now." "All right. He doesn't have any serious conditions, it's just that his mother's death anniversary is approaching. He has some psychological scars." I took the first aid kit and went back down to the basement. I helped him onto the bed and dressed his wounds. "Aren't you going to ask?" "No. But if you want to talk, I'm happy to listen." "It's nothing." "All right." Gordon couldn't sleep, so I stayed with him, reading. After all, I often suffer from insomnia myself. Sometimes we'd watch a movie together on my tablet. 3 days later, Gordon was back to his usual self, pulling me out of the basement. The maids and butlers in the estate acted as though nothing had happened. But between Gordon and me, there was now a subtle shift in our feelings. "Elsie, can you do me a favor?" I had just finished my final project in the art studio on the 3rd floor. Turning, I saw Gordon sitting beside me, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Of course. Gordon raised an eyebrow. I haven't even told you what the favor is. With your wealth and status, there's probably nothing I can help you get. I don't have much of a social circle, so it's not like you need me to introduce you to anyone. The only thing I'm useful for is maybe accompanying you somewhere, like an event? I shrugged. It was probably just to have me as his plus one. Very smart. I want to invite you to my aunt's dinner party. My aunt loves introducing me to all the debutantes she knows, and I can never escape from her clutches. I haven't had a close female companion in years, and now you're here. I readily agreed. Though I had no one to guide me growing up, I was never lacking in money or material things. So, I taught myself everything I needed to know. That morning, Gordon personally delivered the gown to my room. It was a dreamy pink, with intricate layers of tulle creating a voluminous skirt, and the bodice adorned with flowers. It was both grand and playful. After changing, the stylist did my makeup and hair to match the gown. I stood on the second floor, holding the hem of my dress. Gordon looked up from the couch when he heard the sound. When he saw me, his deep blue eyes widened, and he couldn't hide his astonishment. He quickly walked upstairs, stopping a step below me. He gave a gentlemanly bow and extended his hand. This beautiful princess, will you accompany me to the dinner? I couldn't help but laugh. It was just so childish. I placed my hand in his. As we were about to descend, I noticed he hadn't moved. I looked up, confused. Elsie, this is the first time you've smiled since coming here. Do you know why I chose this dress for you? I shook my head. Don't wither because of people who can't appreciate you. You are already beautiful enough, inside and out. The dinner went very smoothly. Gordon's aunt took a great liking to me, and there were none of the debutantes he had mentioned. After the opening dance, Gordon invited me onto the dance floor. Looks like your charm is lacking. I was supposed to be your shield, but it doesn't seem like I've been very useful. Gordon lowered his head. Isn't it because a certain lady is just too dazzling? I looked up into his deep eyes. They were quiet blue, yet brimming with intensity. In the past few months, I had sensed his feelings towards me changing. It wasn't pity, politeness, or even affection for a junior. It was acceptance, indulgence, and admiration. I don't know if this sounds too cheesy, but it's the best metaphor I can think of. Gordon's voice was deep, like a beautiful and elegant cello. I want to be a gardener, nurturing and watering a flower until it blooms, then dedicating my life to admiring and protecting its beauty until it fades. Suddenly, I felt his arms tighten around my waist, and I was pulled into his embrace. Sorry, I've lost control. Gordon apologized, but his hold on me didn't loosen one bit. Your confession is really cliché. I complained, but I understood what he meant. When the song ended, I tried to break free from his grasp. But Gordon didn't follow the script. I had only taken a few steps when he grabbed my arm and lifted me off the ground, carrying me. People around us gasped in surprise. He carried me all the way out of the estate. Without a word, he walked straight to the car and ordered the driver to leave. The ride was silent. Back at Gordon's estate, he picked me up again, gently but firmly. He carried me through the foyer and all the way to the center of the garden, before finally putting me down. You didn't refuse me. Gordon finally peeled off his gentle facade. A man who had fought his way to build an empire, how could he possibly be the gentle knight I imagined? What do you like about me? I stared into his eyes. Everything. The first time I saw you, at the shooting club, I watched you from outside the door for a long time. You looked so fragile, like I could crush you with one hand, yet you were so fierce and captivating. Unloved, insecure, and distrustful of anyone, yet you could paint such clean, soulful pieces. Everything about you fits perfectly with my taste. The nanny who gave you sleeping pills when you were a child, and would hit and scold you for the smallest things, she became a vegetable after a fall. The girls around Baldwin who spread rumors about you, each one of them received anonymous threats. The neighbor downstairs who used to tease you in Y Country, he got caught by you when he tried to sneak a trash bag out, and you kicked him in the groin. You're clearly a little tiger, but you managed to pull off the role of a sweet little bunny without a hitch. I swatted away his hand that was touching my face. TSK. He looked obsessed, almost like a creep. So what? I looked at the big wolf with a tail and sharp teeth. In the basement, you stayed with me for 3 days. At that time, I thought, how great it would be if you could always be by my side. Gordon's hand moved to my cheek and slowly drifted down to my neck, tightening slightly. It felt like my life was in his hands. Strong, possessive. Be my other half, Elsie. I can be your family, your friend, your lover, everything you need. You'll have all my love. And I'll belong to you completely, my wealth, my family, my body, my soul, my life. At that moment, time seemed to stop. I was enticed by the words, all my love. I heard my own voice. Yes. And then I was pulled into his arms, the one who seemed to control my entire world. A domineering, desperate kiss landed on my lips. It felt like he was giving me oxygen. But it also felt like he wanted to consume my entire soul. The next morning, I was woken up by the sound of my phone ringing. I always keep my phone on silent, and since I moved to White Country, the only number I've shared is Gordon's. The ringtone annoyed me. I was about to get up and throw my phone when a hand touched my face. It gently soothed me, making me release the bite I had on my lower lip. Gordon's voice sounded in my ear, "It's okay, it's my phone." After speaking, he picked it up and glanced at the screen. He neither hung up nor answered. I opened my eyes as I lay in Gordon's arms and looked up. He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "It's Baldwin. Are you going to pick it up?" He lowered his head and kissed me lightly. "Give it to me," I rolled my eyes. "So childish, Gordon. I heard you took Elsie to the ball yesterday. Thanks for looking out for her. Elsie's not used to these kinds of events. She didn't cause any trouble, did she?" I cleared my throat. I didn't cause any trouble for Gordon. I was very obedient. I'd been obedient enough to end up in bed with him. I sneered at myself for being so dizzy from being charmed by the man yesterday. "Elsie? I guess you're the one calling," so Gordon gave the phone to me. Good habit of getting up early. Keep it up. Baldwin probably thought we were already up for breakfast. I didn't want to explain. Okay. After a few meaningless pleasantries, Baldwin hung up. Baldwin was standing on the golf course with a few friends. Ivan was grinning proudly. "I told you so." Yesterday, my sister went to Gordon's aunt's dinner party, and she recognized Elsie right away. Baldwin looked at the call screen on his phone, his expression dark and unreadable. "Do you have pictures?" "Yeah, my sister sent them to me. Elsie has never looked so beautiful." "Did you forbid her from dressing up?" Ivan, clueless as ever, was still joking around. He awkwardly laughed a few times when he realized the mood had shifted. "Let me see the pictures." Baldwin's voice had turned completely cold. "Oh, okay." Ivan quickly pulled up the chat history, but Baldwin snatched the phone away from him. Ivan's sister had sent more than 10 photos. There were some of them entering the venue arm in arm, others of them dancing in the ballroom, and a few of Gordon holding Elsie in his arms as they left. Ivan's sister had also sent a few messages. "Look at these two, they're definitely together, right? Mom even told me to go meet Gordon, but turns out he's already taken. Not gonna lie, Elsie is really beautiful. Baldwin hasn't fallen for her after all these years, he's a real brother." Baldwin's face grew darker and darker. "You better be careful with my phone, or it's going to get bent." Ivan scrambled to retrieve his phone. Charles also saw the pictures and sighed, trying to comfort Baldwin. "Elsie looks really good in a gown. She's willing to go to parties now, so that's progress." "Progress? Huh." Baldwin swatted Charles's hand off his shoulder and gritted his teeth. "Gordon." After being with Gordon, I suddenly felt like the whole world had changed. The day after we confirmed our relationship, Gordon handed me the property transfer documents. All the properties under his name. Including the estate we lived in, he wrote my name on it. And his company, most of it was transferred to me. Are you out of your mind? In the study, Gordon sat in the office chair. I was sitting on his lap, flipping through the stack of property transfer documents. What if I hadn't agreed to be with you? We're not married yet. What if I just took the money and ran? I turned to look at the man with a smile on his face, amused. Yeah, I'm crazy. Crazy for crazy, we're a perfect match. Also, baby, the way you look so surprised is like a little kitten, it's so cute. I'm thinking about what else I should give you. I quickly covered his mouth. So cheesy. But I guess, I chose him, so I'll spoil him. This will be our home from now on. Gordon buried his head in my neck. I watched the sunlight spill into the study, and the air felt sweet. I took a deep breath, inhaling that sweetness. Yes. I had never been so happy in my life. We have a home now. We were still lost in the happiness of our little world when my phone rang again. Since the last time Gordon found out about my ringtone phobia, he changed all my ringtones to songs he hums. Honestly, Gordon's voice is really soothing for me. I picked up the phone and saw it was a WeChat call. The caller ID was Mother. Don't worry about me, you can pick it up. Gordon kissed my ear from behind. I steadied myself and answered the call. Elsie, when are you coming back to the country? In 5 months. Baldwin's grandfather is having a birthday party next week. You should go back for it. Okay. Are you having problems with Baldwin? No. Then why is he calling me? Don't bother me with these trivial matters again. Okay. I stared at the phone, still dazed after the call ended. Gordon. What's wrong? I think I'm not sad anymore. I don't even care why she hates me now. Gordon turned me to face him. He stroked my hair, then kissed my forehead. You're the best. I touched my forehead, and before I knew it, tears started to fall. I cried into his arms, completely broken. Let it out. You'll never have to suffer again. I returned with Gordon the day before Baldwin's grandfather's birthday. I took him to stay at my family's villa. After Gordon saw Baldwin's portrait in my studio, he was jealous all night. I promised him I'd paint more for him in the future, to calm him down. When Gordon and I arrived at the banquet hall, there were already a lot of people. Before we even saw Baldwin and his family, Gordon was surrounded by a group of people. I quietly slipped out of the crowd. I found a quiet corner and ate a small cake. Miss Elsie? I looked up to see Jessica, the secretary, wearing a white strapless gown. She was the woman I hated the most, no exceptions. Jessica, as if she didn't see me roll my eyes at her, sat down beside me. You actually came back. I thought you had the guts not to cling to Baldwin anymore. She swirled her wine and quietly expressed her malice toward me. A girl should have some self-respect, don't shamelessly hang around Baldwin. You have no idea how much his mother dislikes you. You're just a wild girl with no proper upbringing, proposing engagement just to give Baldwin's grandfather face. You're nothing more than an amusing toy for him. I'm the one who deserves to stand beside Baldwin. With your slutty look, you must dream of being Baldwin's little wife, huh? I glanced at the small cake I was holding. I had no appetite anymore. Jessica knew I had severe psychological issues. She had provoked me with her words before. In the past, when Baldwin distanced himself from me, I was extremely insecure, so her provocations had been successful. But this time, her true colors were finally exposed. I felt disgusted, wanting to hit her, but I couldn't ruin Baldwin's grandfather's birthday party. I stood up, intending to distance myself from her. Just ignore it, let her bark like a dog. But she grabbed my wrist and pushed me. Ah! Her wine spilled all over her dress. Miss Elsie, I don't have any improper intentions toward Mr. Baldwin. You don't need to be hostile toward every woman around him. Jessica raised her voice, attracting the attention of most people in the hall. I turned around, sensing something. Sure enough, Baldwin was helping his grandfather out of the room. His mother was right behind them. What's going on now? Baldwin frowned, glancing at Jessica's wine-stained dress, and questioned me. His mother also spoke disapprovingly. Today is Baldwin's grandfather's birthday, and you're not even his fiancée yet. You can't be acting like this. Have I taught you nothing? Jealousy in public? How petty. Baldwin's grandfather also frowned and knocked his cane loudly. You need to go back and reflect on your behavior. I'll have to discipline you for your grandfather. What? What is this situation? Are they acting out some melodramatic soap opera with me? The plot was so cliched that even some mindless short dramas would be embarrassed to film it. I was stunned by their words. Elsie! Gordon rushed over from the other side of the hall. His face was dark with anger. I quickly took his hand and shook it. It's fine, I'll handle it. Jessica, looking aggrieved, walked to stand behind Baldwin. His mother comforted her by patting her hand. When you have nothing to say, you really do end up laughing. I ignored their accusations against me. Calmly, I took out the recorder from my bag, turned it on, and cranked up the volume. You have no idea how much Baldwin's mom dislikes you. You're just a wild girl with no proper upbringing. I'm the one who deserves to stand beside Baldwin. With your slutty look. Don't act all high and mighty, this glass of wine can easily make you leave. The hall instantly fell silent, as if you could hear a pin drop. The people around us went from curiosity to disdain. Baldwin and his family's faces turned as colorful as a palette. Jessica's face went pale as she slowly released her grip on hand. Someone nearby laughed softly. People started whispering. Who said they're spoiling Elsie? Look how harshly they've been bullying her. Wasn't it Baldwin who proposed the engagement first? Maybe they think Elsie's family is decent and easy to control. Indeed, Elsie's from a scholarly family, it's so blatant bullying, they must be taking advantage of her parents working abroad. Still, that girl's pretty and sharp-witted. I raised a professional fake smile and turned off the recorder. I've been bullied since I was a child, and now I'm fully alert. The recorder is an essential everyday item for me. Who is this secretary you brought with you, here to ruin my birthday party? The elderly man swung his cane at Baldwin's leg. His mother came over and grabbed my hand. Oh, it's my fault. I was too hasty, afraid Elsie might pick up some bad habits outside. I've always treated you like my own daughter. I nodded perfunctorily, pulling my hand away without leaving a trace. What was that about engagement? Baldwin and I are purely siblings, neither of us agreed to anything, so don't make things up. I blinked innocently, then looked at Baldwin, who was wearing a gloomy expression. Right, Baldwin, my brother. Your secretary is terrifying. If I hadn't brought the recorder, you'd have all framed me with your lies. I'm not even married, and you're already making up rumors about me, how rude. The people in front of me didn't dare to say a word. Thinking I'm an easy target? Even good-natured people have their breaking points. I let out a barely audible cold snort and turned to take the hand of the man who was looking at me with affection. Darling, did I do something wrong? Why do they all dislike me so much? I was planning to introduce them to my boyfriend, too. Gordon pulled me into his arms and kissed my head. Then let's stay away from these people. Okay. Gordon lifted his head, wiped the smile off his face, and looked at them. Since we're not welcome here, Elsie and I will leave. Without waiting for a response, he wrapped his arm around me and led me out. Elsie, wait. Baldwin finally spoke, trying to stop me. But Gordon and I exchanged a glance and smiled at each other, not slowing down. Back at my house. As soon as we walked in, Gordon pushed me against the door. Like a hungry wolf, he kissed my lips, urgently invading. My mind went blank, my head tilted back as I let him show his overwhelming affection. I didn't know how much time passed before he reluctantly pulled away, still kissing me lightly. Do you know how beautiful you are? The way you bite like a little rabbit, how can that be so alluring? Tell me, did you slip me some kind of love potion? I pushed him away, blushing. When he's serious, he looks like a cold, handsome CEO, but when he's in love, he's passionately intense. But I really like it. What I crave the most is this open, shameless love. I wrapped my arms around Gordon's waist and buried my head in his chest. Maybe it's because I have you behind me that I dare to be so bold. I'm originally a dark-hearted, vengeful woman. Now that I have a strong backer, anyone who crosses me will get a bite from me. He laughed so hard his chest shook, hugging me even tighter. Good. You can't bite enough, I'll help you bite. When I woke up the next day, it was already noon. Dazed, I finished washing up and went downstairs, where I found Gordon wearing an apron, cooking in the kitchen. I watched him skillfully cook and chop vegetables, then wrapped my arms around his waist from behind. Did you sleep well? Good, we'll eat soon. I was about to lean over to see what he was making when I heard the doorbell ring. I ran to the door to open it. It was Baldwin. I gently closed the door, turned around, and met his gaze. About what happened yesterday. I'm sorry. Baldwin's voice was hoarse, and if you looked closely, there were dark circles under his eyes. I nodded, but I wasn't about to say it was fine. Here's a quote to consider: if apologies worked, why would we need the police? Is there anything else? I wanted to go back and eat brunch. Were you and Gordon trying to make me angry? We shouldn't drag others into our issues, and Gordon is very busy every day. Please don't bother him all the time. I'm not trying to make you angry. Gordon is my boyfriend, not just anyone, he's my man. I looked him in the eye and explained seriously. Baldwin was stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief. His voice rose. You and him? Do you even know what you're doing? He's 3 years older than me. I shrugged. Yeah, he's 6 years older than me. Isn't that age gap pretty normal? He doesn't treat me like a child. Baldwin still had that expression of disbelief, then frowned and grabbed my arm. No way. I struggled hard but couldn't break free. Why? Do you even know? Don't try to cause trouble. Let go of me. Do you know that his family is dysfunctional? I froze for a moment, slightly stunned. What? Do you know that Gordon's mom was driven to death by his dad? Gordon's dad was a control freak, locked his mom up at home for 10 years. Later, his mom got severe depression, and one moment, she was greeting Gordon downstairs, and the next, she jumped out the window and died in front of him. He saw his mom die. His dad is a control freak, and so is he. Do you know how ruthless he can be? In my country, those who betray him face terrifying consequences. How dare you? Baldwin's eyes were red, and he shook me by the shoulders. I know. I looked down and smiled. I know, big brother. I could feel it when I first met him. What? Baldwin looked like he didn't understand what I was saying. At first, he made all my decisions: what to eat, what to wear, how to balance school and hobbies. Everything was perfectly arranged. Later, I had to report to him who I met, what time I'd be home. But, isn't that exactly what I wanted? He's a control freak, and I have an anxious personality. We're a perfect match. He never minded me being clingy, never thought I was antisocial or friendless. When I had no opinions, he could make decisions for me. I took his hand off my shoulder. Gordon feels like my natural other half. Before, I always dreamed of having someone who would make me their center, care for me, love me, and give me a sense of security. Life is short. If I've met someone who fits me perfectly, why should I force myself to change? Besides, I can feel that we're both getting better. He changed Elsie must wake up at 7 to Elsie must sleep well before waking up. He encourages me to do everything I want. Even if I'm about to fall, he's there to catch me. And my dependence on him gives him a sense of belonging to this world. He's no longer that cold businessman driven by profit. He's no longer the one who would hurt himself and hide in the basement when things didn't go his way. We are each other's home. Thinking about it, I really want to go back to our room and hug Gordon. I used to cling to you too much, causing you a lot of trouble. I get upset and hurt when you misunderstand me. But I'm still grateful for the care you've given me since childhood. After watching Baldwin leave, I immediately opened the door. Gordon was standing less than 10 steps away from the door, looking down at his phone. When he heard the door open, he immediately smiled and opened his arms. I laughed and ran into his embrace. What's this you made? It smells so good. He smoothly lifted me and carried me to the dining room. The dish you love most, but I added green peppers. Your last checkup showed you're anemic, so you need to replenish iron. But I don't like green peppers. No, at least eat one bite. I chopped the peppers really fine and fried them soft, you won't even taste them. Well, I'll just eat a little. Good girl. We didn't rush to go back to Y Country. On the private racetrack in B City, a black and a red sports car were neck and neck. The wheels spun at high speed. The engine roared across the entire track. In the end, the black car's driver outdid the red car by 1 second, crossing the finish line first. After stopping, the drivers, a man and a woman, got out of the cars. I won. Gordon leaned against the car door and motioned for the red car's driver to come closer. I jumped into his arms and bit his exposed neck. I could taste the salty sweat. The adrenaline was still rushing, and I was excited. We kissed passionately. Next time, I'll beat you for sure. This time was just luck, I'll work harder, my opponent is just too strong. Okay. We also attended a few auctions. Gordon got obsessed with a few items he wanted, and I'd raise the paddle and bid for them, then give them to him as gifts. Though they were all bought with his money. At the bar's VIP room. Drink less, you're almost alcohol poisoned. Charles grabbed the bottle from Baldwin's hand. Trying to wake up the drunk man. Why? What? Charles leaned in to listen. Why hasn't Elsie contacted me? She hasn't asked me to watch movies, read books, or draw with her in a long time. None of those women are as beautiful or as obedient as Elsie. Jessica, I fired her. She deliberately tried to stir things up and made Elsie run off to another country. Elsie. I regret it. Baldwin covered his face with both hands, tears seeping through his fingers. Charles irritably lit a cigarette. As Baldwin's best friend, he always knew Baldwin's feelings for Elsie were more than brotherly love. But back then, even if he had pointed it out, Baldwin wouldn't have believed him. So he tried his best to stop Baldwin from hurting Elsie. Now the result was something Baldwin brought on himself. People only realize how precious the things they took for granted were after they've lost them. Epilogue. Early in the morning, Gordon gazed adoringly at his wife in his arms. It had been 7 years since their marriage, and Elsie had become even more captivating with time. They had ventured into new areas together, applied to the same university, enjoyed their college years, and had a romantic campus love story. After graduation, they traveled together and did charity work. They even wrote down the stories of their journey. They had already been resting at the estate for 3 months, and next month, they planned to head to Antarctica. There was so much to prepare in the meantime. Gordon found joy in every moment of it. Over the years, Elsie had completely cut ties with her parents. He had heard that they divorced and each started their own family. As for why her parents never loved her, Gordon thought it probably didn't matter to Elsie anymore. Some truths are too painful, and in their story, there was no need for answers about the past. Even if the truth were known, it wouldn't change anything, it would only bring unnecessary trouble. As for Baldwin, his story was even more complicated, and even now, it was still a tangled mess. He had married Jessica. Unbelievable, right? Yes, it was very unbelievable. Back then, Jessica had drugged Baldwin while he was drunk. Afterward, she ran off to the countryside. She gave birth to a boy and raised him until he was 5, before bringing the child to Baldwin. Under the pressure of his grandfather and parents, they got married. But there was no wedding ceremony. After the marriage, Jessica kept using Baldwin's money to support her own parents. Later, Baldwin and his family discovered that Jessica had 3 younger brothers. They used their position as Baldwin's brothers-in-law to make a mess of Baldwin's company. But by the time Baldwin realized, it was too late to regret. It was said that now, they were fighting for a divorce. Jessica was demanding a huge portion of Baldwin's wealth, unwilling to let go without a fight. Baldwin's mother had somehow gotten Elsie's new phone number. But it was Gordon who answered. He had been authorized by Elsie to manage her social contacts. No one could interfere with their lives. At that thought, Gordon checked the time. It was almost time for Elsie to wake up, they were going out for breakfast today. He'd need to help Elsie choose her outfit. The wisteria flowers were in full bloom outside, so perhaps today, they would wear matching purple outfits. Gordon leaned down and kissed Elsie's forehead. Good morning, my love. My other half. The end.